Hey everyone, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Today, as the title says, we are smoothing the Rockies. So last week we built this ride here, the Coaster Rocky Mountaineer. Overall, I think I said this last episode, but I'll say it again. Overall, I'm quite happy with the layout, the overall layout of the coaster. It's a little bit stretched out between the sort of heartline roll that we built last time and the lift hill. But there are going to be other rides in this area that Rocky Mountaineer will interact with. So I'm kind of filling in the blanks later on. So it should make a little bit more sense when that happens. Because at the moment it looks like the lift hill is just absolutely miles away from the rest of the coaster, which is true. But there's things like a log flume that's going to go in here, maybe a couple of flat rides as well, a restaurant, some stores. So there'll be plenty to sort of fill the gaps. Plus the railway is going to be carving its way through here as well. So we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So yeah, this is a smoothing episode pretty much. I'm changing the layout in small areas, but the majority of this episode is going to be me going around and reprofiling some of these elements. So for example, this double roll that we've got here, which I still need to think of a name for actually, because I know Untamed at Wallaby Holland has this kind of element, and I can't remember what they called it. I think it's like a 270 degree double stall or something. I think it's what they've named it, but I don't know. Maybe we'll go with that name. Maybe we'll call it something different. I don't want to name all my elements after the park or the ride that it's been built on, because at the end of the day that only goes so far as the park that you've built it in. Try and build it somewhere else and then you have to try and explain why it's called, you know, like the Bandito roll or something like that. So we'll come up with a name at some point in the near future, I am sure. But yeah, this roll in particular, you'll see me, I think, a little bit later on in the episode. I can't remember if I built it on camera or not, because I sort of did a first pass as part of this time lapse, and then I did a POV, and then I realised that some of the elements were still really janky. So I went back and had a second pass and kind of fixed those issues a little bit more. There are still some parts that I think could do with another attempt, but overall I think the ride is a lot better now, and particularly the section in the tunnel approaching the lift hill, I've gone and redone that slightly as well. That'll be where the log flume really interacts with this ride, so I've kind of made it so that it feels more out of control and speedy rather than just this really slow, lethargic coast through a tunnel. I've actually made it feel a bit more, you know, intense. This section here as well, so the little rise up to the left with the unbanked curve, it was okay, but again it was kind of causing a lot of slowdown. So I tweaked the roll a little bit. That roll will still cover the entranceway, or one of the entranceways to this area. So I've gone through and I've changed that. And it also means that there's a faster entry to the tunnel. The tunnel itself does need a little bit of work done to it, not the track but the actual tunnel, because I've built and rebuilt quite a few times in here, or in there I should say. There's kind of like shafts that go to nowhere, so we'll have to kind of fix those as well, but again I'll do that off camera, that's no big deal. So overall the ride does feel a lot smoother now, and it does feel a lot more intense. It is possible, as it turned out, to be able to do both at the same time. I'm kicking myself a little bit, because when I built this I wasn't really watching any reference material, so I could have got some POVs up of RMC coasters and had a look at how they actually entered and exited the elements, and had a look at some of the other transitions that the ride has. I didn't do that. Even when I was doing this bit here, I still didn't do that. I have since gone back and watched a couple of POVs, mainly to see how far off I actually am. And I'm not that far off. One of the things RMC is known for is quick transitions. And we do definitely have quick transitions on this ride. This section you see me building here, I think this bit does get scrapped in the end. I kind of wanted a helix. I wanted something where you enter it quite fast and you exit it even faster. So the unbanked section was too fast. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the large right hand turn on Wicker Man, the unbanked turn there, but this one you enter it way too fast. So this whole bit here has also been scrapped. From the roll you now dive straight down into the tunnel, which I think works better for the pacing of the ride as well. And then yeah, you see me attempt number 1 of the tunnel build here. I should say that the POV that you'll be watching at the end of this video is not the same ride that you see me building in this time lapse, because I have gone through and edited quite a few elements between now and recording that that POV. And you'll see what I mean about the POV as well, how the ride does feel a little bit more realistic and a little bit more like an RMC design. Because one of the other things I struggled with really was the 0G stall. Particularly now Zadra in Energylandia is about to open. In fact, I think it might actually be open by the time you watch this. Really quick. They finished it like a couple of weeks ago, and they've done all the test runs, and apparently now we're getting close to opening. So that's quite exciting. It's also an amazingly wacky looking coaster. Like the 0G roll, the 0G stall, I should say, attached to the lift hill is something I would have liked in this park. It wasn't to be though, because the lift hill is so far away from the rest of the coaster, as I said at the start. One of the things I was a little bit unsure of with the POV of Zadra was the ending of the ride looked a little slow, but I've seen some off-ride shots of it, and it's kind of one of those optical illusions where on the ride it looks really, really slow, whereas off the ride it actually looks quite pacey still. So I don't think there's an issue there, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit better about Rocky Mountaineer as well, because that at parts did still look slow, but then when you watch it off-ride it actually looks quite quick. And you can see me here. The wave turn again was something I wasn't too happy with. I felt it was a little too high, so we were losing too much speed. I also felt like the transition in and out of it was a little too slow. One of the things that RMC really has pioneered is the snap transition. So you particularly the 0G stall, you really only flip over into the upside down position just before you crest the hill. So it's you know, you cover 180 degrees in a very short space. Well, yeah, very short space. That's that's the right. I was about to say space and time, but no. So I wanted to make Rocky Mountaineer like that as well. I'm also lowering the track through this section here because that dive that you can see over the top, that's way too steep. That's too snappy a transition for the speed that the train is actually traveling at when it enters that particular section. So we've reworked that. The first drop off the mountainside has been completely reworked anyway. It's been flattened, it's been made to have more airtime. I hope it's been made to have more airtime, and just overall it feels like a slightly better profile for the ride. You see me there, I extended the station, and I think I actually go and move the station in a second as well, to unless that was me moving the station, because I thought that I think it's like 5 or 6 cars that this train has, and I tried to add one more by making the station a little bit longer. It turns out that however long it is by default is the limit, which I think is a little, again, doesn't quite feel realistic. I think some of the smaller parks that this particular version of the RMC in the game is based on are smaller coasters, so they do have smaller capacity, but I'm pretty sure Steel Vengeance has larger trains. I'm trying to think, Outlaw Run I think has small trains because it was kind of the first of its kind. What other ones have quite long trains? Maybe it's just Steel Vengeance. Maybe then, because it's just Cedar Point. Plus, Steel Vengeance has its own coaster in the game anyway, which I did think of using. I think I mentioned this last time for sure. I did think of using, but then you have Steel Vengeance plastered all over the front of your trains, and I didn't really want that. So that was to be avoided. Here I'm struggling to build the final brake section of the ride, because essentially the block from the lift hill to the brakes is too long as it is. Here's me rebuilding the station, by the way, so it actually travels underneath the 0G stall now, which I think is quite cool. Yeah, the last section of the ride, the block section, was a little too long for my liking, so I wanted the brakes to be immediately after the climb underneath the 0G stall again. So it's kind of one of those complaints about Goliath at Six Flags, I want to say over Georgia, I think it's over Georgia. It's a lot of people call it the half coaster. And one of the reasons why Zadra has taken so much attention is because it feels like Goliath but longer, which is what a lot of people seem to want. So I kind of felt like the ride had more momentum to give. So you'll see me build like helixes and all kinds of things like that. But in the end I just thought the block section's too long. I don't want trains to be stuck waiting at the top of the lift hill. So I've gone back and actually shortened the block. So you go through the wave turn, you travel underneath the first drop triple down, quadruple down, whatever it is, and then you go into a triple up yourself, and then you go into a quick snap right turn into the brakes, and then from there you travel down a helix in order to get to the right level to travel into the actual brakes, which take you back into the station. Here I'm experimenting with corkscrews and all sorts of things. None of these get built. They're all just experiments. Inline roll as well, inline twist. I think I went with like barrel roll, heartline roll, overbank turn, as you can see there. None of these were going to work, so ultimately decided just to do the triple up. And again, I think I've said this last episode as well. RMC has quite a lot of unique first of a kind elements, but they've all been done now. So every now and then they'll come up with a new one, like the one on Untamed, and I think that's cool. I like the fact that they are still innovating, but I really struggled to come up with constant unique transitions and elements in this ride. It was always things like triple ups, triple downs, outward bank turns, wave turns, a corkscrew with a slightly different entry and exit to the previous one. Maybe it's just me not being experienced with building these types of coasters, but I really did struggle to find a way to sort of piece the ride together. So yeah, even though I did struggle, I think overall I've come up with a pretty good layout, pretty good design, pretty good pacing. I have got a 3-train setup. There is a little issue of sometimes the train waits on the block brake immediately after the station, but overall it's quite a nice flow to it. The lift hill's nice and speedy, so you climb up the mountain nice and fast. And yeah, I'm happy with it. I am happy with it, and I think beyond a little bit more smoothing, I think I'm done tinkering with the ride now. One of the things that did annoy me, actually, you saw it at the very beginning of the episode, and I think you saw it a little bit when I was editing the Heartline roll as well. For some reason, the Smooth All tool, even the Smooth Banking tool, doesn't like it when you hand build inversions, and it either twists the track completely out of shape or it just removes the inversion. And I think that is something, if Frontier ever work on a sequel to Planet Coaster, Planet Coaster 2 is something I have seen mentioned, but why they'd be working on that right now when Planet Zoo is about to be released, I don't actually know. But if they do ever consider doing that, that is something I think that, I mean, a lot of people would want to see that improved anyway, but I think that is something that they've acknowledged isn't the best. So that'll probably be first thing on the to-do list, in all honesty. And I'd look forward to seeing how that would work now. But yeah, this is me building the kind of finale of the ride. Again, I think you see me sort of mess around with the idea of a non-block brake run. So just like a slow down section of the ride, and then the helix that goes down into the main brakes, which does contain a block, and then running into the station. It's okay to do it like that. I have now changed it so that the first set of brakes does also have a block brake, so that if you are waiting on the lift hill, you're not waiting for too long. But yeah, again, this was a really awkward bit of the coaster because I clearly had more speed than I intended at this point of the ride, and the normal length that I build my block sections, or the actual brake section itself, it wasn't long enough to actually slow the train down without it looking incredibly unrealistic. So I had to kind of stretch it and then condense it and then stretch it and find the right balance. So what I actually ended up doing was just lifting the block section up a little bit higher, or lifting the brakes up, sorry, a little bit higher, to bleed off a little bit more speed. That's why we've got this like triple up, quadruple up. I think it's triple up. Again, with the smoothing, it went from sort of like a triple up to like a double and a half up, if that makes sense, because one of the hills got completely flattened out. But yeah, there's only so many times I can say I'm happy with the overall layout of the ride, but in truth I am happy with the overall layout of the ride. I like the fact that it interacts with the topography quite a lot. I like the fact that the lift hill is kind of isolated from the rest of the ride, because you don't get that too often, particularly on RMCs. Some of the coasters like Outlaw Run and again, I've completely forgotten every single RMC ever built. Untamed kind of has it as well, where they're both out and back coasters still, but they kind of spread out a little bit more. They spread their wings, and I really like Untamed's U-shape. I think that's quite good around the lake. It looks quite nice, quite picturesque. One of my big complaints about rides like Steel Vengeance, Medusa, Goliath, even Zadra, is they're very Coney Island Cyclone-esque in that they kind of just loop around themselves a few times, particularly Steel Vengeance. I think it's 3 or 4 laps you do, and by the end you're like 2 foot off the ground doing little bunny hops under the structure, because I kind of feel like that ride is too long. Even with the block breaks in the middle, I think it's too long, and you do end up just, as I say, going along the ground, trying to get back to the station. Plus the fact that it is all in one big area. The whole ride is in one big area, so you can kind of see all of it from the same point. And I like my rides to be a little bit more spread out, so that you can't see the whole coaster from a single point. So having tunnels is a good way of doing that. Also having the ride go behind trees, buildings, little things like that. So it is literally impossible to see the whole of Rocky Mountaineer from a single point. Plus also having the 2 focal points. The big Immelman, for example, is a really good photogenic point of the ride. 0G stall as well. And also having that not just be off the ground slightly, but also be halfway up a mountain as well, adds to that kind of fear factor. The little outward bank turn at the edge of the mountain, the edge of the cliff, that then goes over the top of the big major drop as well. I like that feature. This is me flattening out these hills a little bit more. The 4-meter method, by the way, I don't think works for RMC coasters, because I used the 4-meter method to build this ride and it doesn't work. It did not work. It doesn't create the snappy transitions that you'd come to expect from an RMC. So I would say that was a bit of a fail on my part. So I've actually gone back and, I mean, again, you'd have seen this at the beginning of the episode. A lot of these sections of track I've rebuilt using larger sections, larger track pieces, and it has smoothed it out a lot more. This is me building this hill as well. I wanted it to have quite a dive, because you're supposed to get airtime from this hill. So I did want it to have quite a dive. Lowering the track on both sides underneath that section allowed me to lower the overall section, which is also good. I'm losing my words here. I think it's just because it's hot today. It's really hot today. What is the temperature today when I'm recording this? Only 16 apparently. It feels a lot hotter than that. Maybe it's just because my room's hot. I've got loads of electronics on. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so you get lots more airtime, and I like this kind of flat sections. You've got the head chopper effect as you go under the exit of the station there, and then you kind of go along a flat piece of track, and you're still going about 65 miles an hour at that point, and then just before you hit the Immelman, you dive down again into the valley, and I really like that, particularly on the POV as well. That does look really, really good. So I'll show you that in the POV, which is coming up in just a second. Speaking of which, I should probably start wrapping up the episode now. So bear in mind that the POV you're about to watch does contain some elements that were not built in this time-lapse. But yeah, beyond that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series, drop some comments down below with feedback on this coaster, any ideas that you think I might have missed. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Enjoy the POV, and until next time, I will see you soon.